Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Just Another Struggling Writer, the beleaguered author's one-stop shop for commiseration and hopefully inspiration. My name is Carrie Scher, and I am just another struggling writer. Well, today I have a fun video for you, the mid-year freakout tag for writers. If you've been anywhere in the bookish space, you know that the mid-year freakout tag for books is one of the most popular booktube videos that creators do every year, myself included. But this year, the writer's version has been going around and I have been very eager to tackle it myself. I will link the original video below if you want to check out her channel. But without further ado, let's get into the questions. Question 1. Yes, I did set goals. I set many goals, actually. If the girlies are fighting. If you are here, you may remember my writing resolutions. If not, I will link the video in the cards and down below. But essentially what it came down to was I had something like 17 writing goals for the year, and I arranged them in tiers from bottom of the barrel, absolute baseline, to completely ludicrous, never gonna happen sort of goals. Because I had so many, I'm not gonna go through them all, but the main ones were writing at least 500 words every day, finishing the first draft of Seekers of Empyrean, tracking my daily word counts better, and quarterly reflections and evaluations of my writing progress. For the most part, I have hit those, except for the daily writing baseline. There have been several days actually throughout the spring especially that I really struggled to be creative. I was just not in a good space. And I have realized as I have been embarking on this 12-week writing challenge, I don't think I need to or even should write every day. I do think there are going to be times where I can write consecutively for 12, 14, 21 days in a row, but there are times where I need a break. And so I am not super bummed about this goal kind of falling by the wayside. I think what is more of a goal for me is to just be consistent. I need the habit to be writing more often than not. While that has been a struggle at times, especially like when I was in the middle of that first draft in the spring and I was really struggling with my creativity, that certainly was something I had a harder time with. But as I have gotten on this 12-week writing challenge, it has been the case that I've been writing more days than I haven't been. So in that regard, it's been a success. Secondly, of course, as you all are assuredly tired of hearing by now, I did finish the first draft of Seekers of Empyrean. It did take me a little bit longer than I would like. I had originally targeted March 31st and ended up on June 1st. So it took me a little bit longer, but I'm just so happy to have finally finished a first draft that I don't really care how that box got checked. It's done. As for my word count tracking, I've been doing way better with that. I used TrackBear starting on January 1st to track my daily word count, and that has been super effective. With this 12-week writing challenge, I have also implemented a spreadsheet to keep track of my words. It's less about the word count specifically for me though, it's more like tracking writing sessions. So it's a little bit different from TrackBear. But the problem is that my word processor, I use a browser-based word processor called Dabble, and I like it for a lot of reasons, but one thing it kind of falls down on is that it only tracks your last 30 days of writing, and then it tracks it across all projects so that like if you're adding words to like your notes section in your book, it's counting that towards your words written. So it's a little bit wonky, and so I'm glad that I've been able to get on the TrackBear train, and then also tracking my sessions with this little spreadsheet. And then for my quarterly reflections, I actually bumped that up to every month with my writing wrap-ups every month. And yeah, I'm gonna continue doing that. I'm gonna keep making that a regular thing. I think it's helpful for me to sit back and look back on my month and document the wins, because a lot of times for me, someone with an anxiety and who can be really hard on myself, it's easier to remember all the times that I didn't succeed. So I think these writing wrap-ups really help me remember that it wasn't just there weren't just failures, there were victories too. So like I said, I'm going to continue doing them. If there's anything you'd like to see in those writing wrap-ups, let me know, because especially in like this last one, I was like, oh, I'm just talking about all the things that if people have been watching regularly would know already. So I don't know how useful it is, but like I said, it's useful for me. Question 2. Again, no surprises. I have been working on since the beginning of last year, actually going all the way back to the end of September. My current work in progress, Seekers of Empyrean, my Monster of the Week inspired urban fantasy about a young woman with a rare magical ability who is recruited by a secret government agency to hunt down and stop a growing threat to the magical community. All right, man, you're gonna get out of here. Cat shenanigans. And as I just mentioned, I was able to finish the first draft, but not all of it was just this year. I did start it at the end of September, and then I pretty much immediately got right back into it with the second draft. So that's pretty much it. I do have a second project kind of percolating that I would like to start getting ready to draft. So brainstorming, outlining, all of that stuff. But that has been kind of contingent on me having energy after I meet my daily goals for Seekers, and that just hasn't been the case at all. But I just crunched the numbers, and this year, between finishing the first draft and starting the second draft, I have actually written over 100,000 words so far, which I think is probably well more than I've ever written in a single year before. So that's huge. If that bears out, I will have written more than 200,000 words for the year. And actually, I'd really like to finish draft 3 of Seekers. So that would put me pretty dang close to 300,000, and that's awesome. So I'm very excited about those numbers. Question 3. The theme here is Seekers. Yes, I finished a huge milestone for me, and that is finishing a first draft. Okay, sorry if the angle changed, minor emergency to take care of. I did finish the first draft of Seekers of Empyrean, and that is actually a big deal for me because while I have been writing or trying to write for like the last almost 15 years, I have really struggled with commitment and staying on task and finishing projects. A lot of times I would write the first 20,000 words of a new idea and then let it fizzle out. And that happened numerous times over the years. And so while I did manage to finish one first draft all the way back in 2019, I wasn't really super in love with the process and how it ended up, because by the time I got to the end, it was super incomplete. I had left a lot of holes where I just skipped scenes that were too difficult for me at the time and never went back to it. And then as I moved on to wanting to revise, I realized that it was so broken that it was not even like a draft 2 would not make any sense. Like it needed such major revisions that it was more like a draft 0 than a draft 1. So the fact that I was able to brainstorm, world build, and outline, and then follow that outline and then complete a complete draft, that was actually a huge step for me. It actually gave me a lot of hope that I can do this. And that's part of the reason that I was so determined to launch straight into the second draft, was because I've seen that I can finish a first draft. Now let's see if I have the chops to revise as well. So yes, that was a big milestone for me, was finishing that draft. And then starting a second draft. I haven't really done that either. So I'm hitting a lot of milestones this year. Question 4. I don't have a super robust writing routine. I have so much going on in my life that it's hard to have a consistent routine. But something I have found of late is that I am very much a night writer. I do my best writing later in the evening, which can be a problem because that means I'm expending a lot of my mental energy throughout the day, especially on days that I have work. But it is what it is. I have tried to like get up and write first thing in the morning, and it doesn't really work for me. Even when I sleep in and then go, okay, I've slept in, I've obviously had my fill, this isn't an issue of me getting up too early, I can't focus on it. I prefer to get up and start my day with something else other than writing. I know that's a little on the unusual side. It's just what works for me. And that has pretty much always been the case. I have always tried to do my writing in the evening after the kids go to bed because there are fewer distractions and I don't feel like the guilt of focusing on my project rather than on the kids. So pretty much at night is my only routine. Typically after 9 o'clock, sometimes even as late as like 10 or 10:30, but that's it. No other routine. Right now, my writing space is in my recliner. Sometimes I will have like a baseball game on, but what I'm trying to get out of that because I do end up watching the baseball game more than I'm writing. So usually like some ambient music and like an ambient like video on like YouTube on the TV. That's about it. And then drinking a Dr. Pepper, which, you know, you may pretty much assume that that is always the case. Question 5. Not this year. I have had a tool chest of writing resources in my back pocket that I've been collecting for like the last decade. The biggest one I made a video on earlier this year. I will link it in the cards and down below. It is on a constructed language tool where you can generate your own language for your fantasy or sci-fi project, which I think is one of the best resources out there for a fantasy or sci-fi writer who want to be in depth and want to go into a lot of detail, but don't have the know-how or the skill to build their own constructed language. You can use this tool to generate your own. I have actually done that for another project. I've got it saved to my computer. It helped me come up with names, especially like location names and terms. And what I love about it is that means that they all follow their own consistent logic, and it's not like you're pulling names and things from various languages that we're all familiar with in the real world. And so so that way people would read it and not feel like pulled out of it if they notice that they don't match. Does that make sense? Like I said, I'll link that video above. I highly recommend you check it out. It's called Vulgar Lang. There's also like fantasy map generators. I have one in particular that I like that I will make a video on eventually. My browser-based word processor, I've mentioned a couple of times, Dabble, is a great resource for my traditionally published friends. I definitely love the Print Run podcast. It is run by 2 agents who started at a boutique agent and then formed their own. I think they're really funny, and I think they have a lot of really great insight into the publishing industry from an agent's perspective. So those are kind of the big ones. I highly recommend you check them out. But again, none of that is new to me. I've had all of those kind of in my back pocket for a while. Question 6. I do not. I can't listen to anything with words. It's very distracting for me. I know a lot of writers are like that where they can't listen to anything with words, but for me in particular, I have audio processing issues, and if I'm trying to concentrate, when someone starts speaking, it automatically wants to pull my focus over there, and so I can't do it. That being said, I have been slowly kind of putting together a Seekers of Empyrean inspired playlist. But the other thing is because of my audio processing issues, I'm not super musically inspired. There is one song that I've kind of pinned as like the anthem of this project, and it is Jericho by Iniko, which I highly recommend you check out. It's excellent, and it does very much feel like the heart and soul of this project. Question 7. That's tough, but I would have to say the moment that I arrived at the big fight scene in my first draft of Seekers, it took me 6 weeks to write 6,000 words because I realized how bad I am at visualizing this sort of writing content. I am very much a conversation-driven writer, an interiority-driven writer. So much of my work is, especially in early drafts, is railroading from one conversation to the next, to the next, to the next. And I have struggled, especially with description of setting and characters, and also making things an action outside of the characters interacting with one another. I am actively working on that. In fact, something that I realized as I was struggling through that fight scene is that I need to get good at it because I think it really needs to feature heavily in these books, in this series that I'm trying to write, because I think it'll be way more interesting. It's definitely more action-packed, and the way I visualize it, I think it needs to be a key component. And so I am already adding more fight scenes into the second draft, which means that I'm forcing myself to write them more and more. And obviously you will never get better at anything if you don't practice. So that's good in that regard. It's just, it is difficult. It is difficult for me. And realizing that a aspect of writing that I'm actively bad at needs to play such a key role in the story I'm writing was a tough moment. And slogging through the fight scene and how long it took me was also, kind of a bummer, but we got through it in the end. Question 8. Obviously, finishing Seekers. That was such a huge high for me. Such a huge high for all the reasons I've already mentioned. But also, as an honorable mention, I would say that realizing that I have to compromise the things that I want to do in a day in order to prioritize writing was also kind of a big deal. And once I made that realization, I was able to truly prioritize it and come to the realization that I do have what it takes to do something like this 12-week challenge. I just need to accept that I can't do everything I want in a day. And while that sounds like a bummer, and it kind of is, it was a big step for me because I am a big type A person. My biggest lament in life is that there are not enough hours in a day, and I wish I could sleep less to get more stuff done. And at one point I was sitting down with my therapist and she asked me, she was like, have you thought about how much time it actually takes to complete all of the stuff that you want to do? And I sat down and I tallied it all up, and like for a Monday, it was like 16 hours worth of tasks, not including the 9 hours I spend at work. And that is 25 hours. So I that helped me kind of put into perspective, it simply is impossible to do all of the things I want to do in a day. By accepting that I can't do it all, I have pushed myself further in my writing goals. And that really is what it has all been about for me, is being a writer. And while it does suck that I can't go to the gym and read 100 books in a year and make content for 2 channels and all this stuff all the time, ultimately, I'm in a place now where writing truly is the priority, apart from, my family and everything. That was the ultimate goal for me. And I feel like I have finally, after like 8 years, gotten to a point where I am truly prioritizing it. And I'm really excited about that. So for me, while it's a little bittersweet, it is one of the best things that's happened to me this year. Question 9. I mentioned this in my lessons for my first draft video, again, linked. But I think one of the biggest lessons was realizing that the best thing you can write is what keeps you moving forward. If you get hung up on a sentence or a paragraph or a moment in your story and you can't move past it, you need to just put something there. It doesn't matter if it's good. It doesn't matter if it gets revised out later, and it doesn't matter if it even makes sense. It just needs to get you to the next moment. I realized that when trying to get this first draft finished is I can't be so hung up on if this line that I'm about to say is in character. If I'm so hung up on it and if I can't think of anything else, I need to just put something there and move on, because you can always revise it. Always revise it. Now, as I moved into the second draft, I realized that I can't hold to that all the time because I am trying to improve. However, that being said, the second draft, I'm making big structural improvements. I'm not making like line level improvements. So I think that can still hold true for now. And as I move forward into hopefully draft 3, then I can start focusing down on the line levels and going, okay, this line is bad. How can I make it better? But you can't get to draft 3 without a draft 2, and you can't get to draft 2 without a draft 1. You can't finish a draft 1 if you're stuck on this one line. And as someone who, there are days where I'm writing and writing and writing until I literally can't pull any more words out of my head. Yeah, there are times where I literally can't think of anything. And so a line or a paragraph or whatever, a plot moment that you necessarily aren't in love with, it's the best thing you can write in that moment because it gets you out of this holding pattern that you're in. So I would say that was the biggest lesson. And then lastly, question 10. And that's pretty dang easy. I'd like to finish the second draft of Seekers of Empyrean. I would love to finish the third draft as well, but we'll see how that goes. And I would like to brainstorm and get draft ready my next project, which is tentatively titled Daughters of Necessity. But there's also other things that I've got going on. I've got a writers conference that I'll be attending at the beginning of October. In fact, I just signed up for a writers workshop on the Friday before the conference kicks off. I would like to touch base with some critique partners so that once draft 3 is ready, hopefully by the end of the year, I will have people ready to read for me. I would really love to get Seeker's query ready by this time next year. That's my goal. But I need to finish draft 2 and then I need to finish draft 3. And if I'm going to do both of those things, I have to do this 12-week writing challenge essentially twice in a row. But I think as I keep doing it and as it becomes my norm, I don't think it'll be as hard. That is my hope anyway. As I have again accepted that this is my priority, this is my life. I come home and I write all of these words and I spend my weekend and I do more writing until I can get published and make enough money to quit my job. This is my life. But yeah, so finishing 2 drafts, getting another project brainstormed, world built and outlined and ready to go to start drafting, getting critique partners, and just continuing to connect and grow within this lovely, wonderful, absolutely amazing community that I found myself a part in. I have been so touched by the support I've received, especially since finishing the first draft. It has been amazing. I have always struggled with things like social media and, like, to be honest, like making friends. I am very much a very private person typically, and I get the social anxiety. And so to come into a community that has been so wonderful and has embraced me has been wonderful. So thank you so much. And with that, thank you so much for watching. I so appreciate it. If you like my content and want to support the channel, please like and subscribe, or consider leaving a comment down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, please leave me a sun emoji for this blazing hot summer that we are all experiencing. Although I am in Texas and it has not been that hot. Can we just talk about this? I live in the DFW area and we have had very, very few like 100-degree plus days so far, when like normally those start in like April. In my next video, I will have my next 12-week writing a challenge vlog for you, and spoiler alert, it's a little bit of a doozy. So I hope you look forward to it, and I will see you then. Bye.